Guys, the time is here for Ted Lasso, the season 3 finale, and very possibly the series finale. We have got to talk about this because Ted Lasso has changed my life. I have such an interesting relationship with this show because I just very recently got into it. It was back in November when I ended up getting a 3-month free trial for Apple TV Plus, and the only reason I got it at that time was just because I wanted to watch Spirited. Great movie, by the way. You can check out my review on the channel. But then, obviously, I knew I wanted to watch Ted Lasso because I had heard so many great things about it. I was like, all right, I have to watch the show at some point. But it just kind of sat there on my watch list on Apple TV Plus because, it was around Christmas. I was busy. I didn't end up watching it until January. It was like the end of January. I started watching Ted Lasso, started watching a couple episodes a night, ended up binge watching it basically. And I just fell in love with this show. I fell in love with these characters, this story. I fell in love with AFC Richmond. And so I got caught up with the first 2 seasons and became very extremely excited for season 3 when it eventually came this March. And it was never blatantly said that this would be the final season, but what everybody said from the cast and crew, Jason Sudeikis, Brett Goldstein, everybody who worked on Ted Lasso said that they only planned this story to last 3 seasons. And this is where the story would naturally come to its end. Was there a possibility for season 4? Yes, there was definitely a possibility there, but it's not something they planned on doing. So that's why some of you may be a little confused about it just says season 3 finale on Apple TV Plus. It doesn't say series finale anywhere. Why would this be the series finale? Well, if you watched it, you would see why it's the series finale. I mean, yes, there could be a season 4. Yes, there could be a spinoff, and I'll definitely get into talking about that. But this is the end of Ted Lasso, and this is going to be a spoilers-filled review and breakdown for the Ted Lasso season 3/series finale, because, it's kind of hard to talk about it without not spoiling it. But if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want spoilers, basically, it was perfect. Like, it was such a beautiful ending for this show. I am so happy with this. It's one of those things where it's like you're crying the whole episode, but not because it's sad. It is sad, but it's almost happy tears. Like seeing some of these happy endings and stuff, it was just great. And the real reason Ted Lasso cannot continue, to kind of jump into things here, is because Ted left. He left AFC Richmond. He left the UK. He went back home to be with his son, which was a clear sit-up after the cliffhanger from last episode, which last episode was great as well. And so we knew this was coming. We saw it coming. They waste no time addressing it at the beginning of this episode. Ted is leaving. And we get all of the emotional goodbyes between every person he's formed a relationship with here. But I found it really interesting that everybody was super emotional about it except Ted, which I actually found to be a great choice because, we've seen Ted get really emotional, not only in this season, but past seasons with his panic attacks and everything. So for him to be the one that is so sure about this decision, that is so stable with his emotions, was really interesting. I really enjoyed seeing that, and just goes to show that character arc, and just the writing on this show is so beautiful, and the character development is so good, and Ted Lasso is one of the best examples of that. So Ted has his final match with AFC Richmond as the head coach. He gives his final speech. We rebuild the believe sign. It's a beautiful thing. He goes back home, and we get to see him reunite with his son. And not only that, but he ends up becoming a coach for his son's soccer team, which I think is a great way for Ted to kind of continue the legacy. And also now we have a Lasso out there on the field as well. And just one of the last lines of the series is him talking to his son, and be a goldfish is brought up. And that was just such a beautiful moment, because that's definitely one of my favorite quotes from the series. I have Ted Lasso socks. One of those pairs of socks is be a goldfish socks. which is great. Which actually, speaking of that, another thing that I really fell in love with the show when I watched the first couple seasons. I fell in love with it so much that I have Ted Lasso pajama pants, Ted Lasso socks, and Ted Lasso shirts, and I wore the full set every new episode. And tonight, this was the last time. I mean, I'm still gonna wear it, obviously, but it was the last time wearing it for a new episode. So yeah, that's Ted. Ted gets the happy ending that he deserves. I think it was perfect for him. And I loved the ending shot of the episode when he kind of just looks off into the distance and then suddenly he kind of breaks the fourth wall and looks directly at the camera, directly at us, the audience. It was beautiful. I really enjoyed it. Rebecca. Let's talk about Rebecca. So Rebecca gets a really interesting ending because there's talk throughout this episode that she might just sell the whole club and just completely move on from football and just start a new life, super duper rich. But she instead decides to sell 49% of the company in shares to the fans, which I think was a great idea. Not only that, but then she gets the family that she wanted. She reunites with that mystery man that she met about halfway through the season. I thought that was one of my favorite episodes of the season as well. I thought that was great to see, not only because she gets a new man. Rupert is finally taken care of. He finally got what he deserved. She is no longer obsessed with getting revenge on her ex-husband. She now can focus on her own life, on her own love life, starting a life with this guy and his daughter, which I think is even better because, that was another point of interest for her character through the season, is that she wanted to have kids. She wanted to be a mother, but she can't have kids. So this is a great way for now. She has a daughter, she has a family, and when we see kind of some of the stuff that's taking place in the future, at the end of the episode, you get to see that she did get to start that family eventually. Now, as for Nate is the only character that I felt a little disappointed by in this episode. I thought he had a great storyline this season. Obviously, his downfall in season 2 brought him into his full villain arc for season 3, but eventually he got the redemption by the end. I thought that was great. It was a little sad to see in the end he kind of just went back to where he started the series, just as like the assistant ball boy, basically. Water boy, whatever you want to call it. It's a really terrible role. But it was just good to see him back. And, some of the reminiscing. And there were a lot of great references in this episode to earlier stuff in the show. Not only the Be a Goldfish, but obviously the Diamond Dogs. Ted doing his dance that he did at the beginning of the series that he did with his original, American football team. So he did that with them. There was just a lot of great references here. But Nate gets the happy ending he deserves as well. He gets to continue working with AFC Richmond. I'm assuming he takes up a bigger role when Ted leaves. He has the girlfriend now with Jade. His family's happy. I'm happy for him. We also have Roy in this episode and this whole season has been quite interesting because kind of the whole season he's just been obsessing over Keely. And Keely has been dealing with her own thing. They, of course, broke up at the beginning of the season. He's been longing to get back with her. And especially at the beginning of this episode, we saw how Roy and Jamie were actually kind of fighting over her. And they gave her the choice to pick between the two of them, and she picked neither. And while I really loved Keely and Roy together, I also I didn't love Keely and Jamie in season 1, but I mean, where Jamie's at now, I would have enjoyed to see that as well. But I think it is more important that they maintain that friendship and that relationship that Roy and Jamie have now built over the years. And she instead doesn't need a man or a woman. She had that whole thing with Jack. So I think that's great. Now she's got the thing with the AFC Richmond Female League, which looks like it could be a really interesting idea. I think that's great. A nice way to take the club in for the future. I think that's awesome. Of course, with her own company as well. That's going great. Roy, of course, also, he at the end becomes the new head coach after Ted leaves. I think that's perfect. Just makes perfect sense for where his character started to where it went in season 2 to where it went in season 3. Perfect ending for him. As for Jamie, I love what was done with this character. I remember, he was a complete jerk in season 1. I hated the character. He came back in season 2. I was like, great, this guy's back. But then he got the bit of a redemption arc and really, really redeemed in season 3. And again, I really love that relationship and that friendship that he formed with Roy. I love the whole thing with his father. His father now in rehab, and you get to see them kind of reconnecting at the end. I thought that was beautiful to see. Sam was great. I loved his ending as well. He got to make the final shot in the last game that we got to see in the show. He obviously, things are going great with his restaurant. He finally got invited to play on the Nigerian football team. So I thought that was great because that was another thing he kind of wanted throughout the season. So that was awesome to see. Beard, of course. I had a feeling he was going to stay. I almost thought for a second that maybe he might even become the new head coach, but I'm glad Roy got that. But yeah, I really loved that moment. That was hilarious. Also, his escape plan when he got on the plane and then, he was like, I'm in love with Jane. I got to go marry her. And then they did get married and you could tell it was like totally green screen, but I think it looked fake on purpose. But I think that was great. I thought that was a great ending for Beard. And let's see. Yeah, the ending was great. I mean, it was a super emotional episode, but especially at the end when they start playing the song Father and Son, which is already a super emotional song for me because, well, first of all, the song on its own is emotional, but I know it mainly, and I was first introduced to the song in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which, spoiler alert for that, but it plays during Yondu's funeral, so I already had an emotional connection to that song because of that movie, and now I have double the emotional connection with this ending of Ted Lasso. When we just get that ending, the song is playing, everybody's getting their happy endings, you're getting all these like flashes of like where everybody's at now. I thought that was great to see, and kind of the big ending point here that I want to talk about is that Trent Krim, of course, he was writing this book throughout the season, and we saw at the beginning of this episode that he called it The Lasso Way, which, of course, I thought, that's like the perfect name. And, he asked Beard and Ted for notes on it, what they thought about it, and the final note from Ted is that he should change the name because it was never about him. It never was. And so we see that the final name is not The Lasso Way, but instead The Richmond Way. And so that right there, instantly in that moment, I was thinking like, they have to change the name. Is this like symbolism for like change the name of the show so it's no longer Ted Lasso, now it's called the Richmond Way? Is that what they're gonna do if we get a season 4? Because if you do a season 4, which I don't want, but if they did do it, obviously I'm gonna watch it. Would they continue this Ted Lasso show and change the name to the Richmond Way, or would they instead make it a spin-off series and call that the Richmond Way? That is, I think, the best way of doing it if they went that path and decided to do that. But again, personally, I don't want that because I know that prior to this episode and throughout the season, whenever it was brought up to fans about this being the final season, everybody was like, no, please make more. I watched a bunch of interviews these last couple of days with Jason Sudeikis, with interviewers just like kind of, I guess blindly is the best way to say it, blindly begging for Jason Sudeikis to make a season 4 because, oh my God, we love the show. It just brings such positivity and emotion and everything. And yes, I love that. I love that about the show. This is probably one of my favorite series I've ever watched. So obviously I don't want it to be gone from my life, but then again, that is part of life, is, part of the journey is the end, and all good things must come to an end, and Ted Lasso has as well. And would it be cool to get more and get more positivity and more great writing and just more great television that Ted Lasso is? Yes, but with how this ended, it could continue, but I don't want it to, because this is just such a perfect ending that I don't want them to tarnish that by forcing more out just because this is a big moneymaker for Apple TV Plus. Because, I mean, let's be honest here, this is like the not only the best, but I'd say definitely the most popular show on Apple TV Plus. Um, I think it's the perfect ending. I don't want this to be one of those shows that goes on for years and years and then ends up overstaying its welcome. Ted Lasso, it just had the right amount of time. It had the perfect conclusion. It told the story they wanted to tell, and that is it. We don't want this to turn into The Flash, where, The Flash, first couple seasons, amazing. Then it went on for 10 more years, and it just went downhill. So I think this is a good ending. I think this is perfect. As much as I love Ted Lasso, I want this to be it. I'm not coming at it from the perspective of people that think this show is woke and are like, "Oh, thank God that trash is over." No, I love this show. I think it is a masterpiece, but this is the perfect ending, and I don't want that to be ruined. I think that maybe I could see a spin-off of The Richmond Way working, with Roy, Beard, and Nate leading Richmond, and all the players and everything. That would be interesting, but I honestly think this is the perfect way to end it off for these characters. I think I'd love to see everybody move on and see what other work people are going to do. Obviously, Jason Sudeikis has made it pretty clear he's ready to move on. Brett Goldstein is going to be in the MCU as Hercules, so there's a lot of stuff that's really exciting for the future. But for now, guys, that was Ted Lasso, season 3, possibly the whole series. I loved it so much. It was the perfect ending. Like I said, many tears were shed during this finale. But guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think about Ted Lasso Season 3? What did you think about this possible series finale? Do you want this to be the end? Or do you want a Season 4? Or maybe a spin-off? Just definitely let me know in the comments below. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video and hit the subscribe button so I can keep you up to date on everything that goes on in the movie life. And be a goldfish.